So I left the Mormon Church when I was 18 years old. And so my experience as a faithful Latter-day Saint is only as a minor. And so for me, the ridiculous amount of things that I had to do was one of the things that I remember the most. I had to show up on Sunday mornings and serve in a million different ways. And I had to show up on Wednesdays for Mutual. And I had to show up on Saturday mornings to help people move because I was a big kid and so were my brothers. And so my experience as a Mormon, the thing that I remember the most is the incredible amount of expectations that were put on me. And then as I got a little bit older into my teenage years, I started asking, why am I doing these things? Should I be doing these things? And are they earning me anything? And so I came to the conclusion that I need to go back and I need to look at who Joseph Smith is, who the man is that started this entire movement or this entire religion. And what I found early on in my teenage years is that I didn't believe in who Joseph Smith was. And so for me, at an early age, that became something that was very problematic. If Joseph Smith wasn't who he said he was, then all of these things that I'm doing and all of these articles of faith and all of these scriptures that were really preached to me as a young person, all of those were meaningless.
Yeah, for me, I come from a Mormon background where we date back to the beginning, and my story actually starts with my mom's story, which is for her to tell another day. But for me, I remember early on, we regularly attended, we did what we were supposed to do, and the turning point for me of questioning all that was going on was actually my baptism. My dad baptized me, and after the 8th dunk and him reciting all that he had to say 8 times, and I was in the back getting undressed out of my wet clothes, and a woman came in and said, "I'm so sorry, but we're gonna have to do this again." And I remember in that moment thinking to myself, why would God care? Later on, I would find out that my mom, who was standing back in the corner during this whole event, was just dying inside. Everything about it was wrong, and she didn't want to do it, but it's all she knew. And so what was she supposed to do with all of her family watching their first grandchild turn 8? And so going through those motions was just natural. From there, we moved to Boise, Idaho for a brief moment and then moved back to Utah. And it was actually during that move where the transition happened of my mom seeking other churches. She wasn't sure what, but she knew it was time to leave the Mormon church. She knew it wasn't true. From there, I left Utah, and I hated anything having to do with religion. And that's really how I saw it. I saw Mormonism as a religion. And anything of the same sort, the same thing, religion. As I was away, my parents came to saving faith in Jesus, and I would come home and visit, and all they would do was talk about Jesus. And I was angry, and all I saw it was just another religion that they had found, and that they wanted me to be a part of it. I moved back to Utah ultimately and was going to school and living the American dream and pursuing all things that the world told me to pursue. Everything was great, but not really. I was living in the dark, and I had no idea until one evening it was like God switched on the light, and all of my sin was revealed to me. And from that, I broke off an engagement. I was engaged to someone. I quit my job. I had just graduated 2 weeks before. I packed up everything and I moved home. I was broken. I had nothing left. I had no direction. And so I went back to mom and dad. And I remember as I was sitting on the edge of the couch where I sat for a good 9 months, broken and lost, I just remember calling out to God and saying, I don't know what this is, but I want it. And He was faithful to show me the way and ultimately bringing me to saving faith in Jesus and completely transforming my life and giving me a new heart and renewing my mind to all that is good and of Him. So.
And that's where I come into the story.
That's where you come into the story.
Because that experience, all that Taylee just said, I met her just a few months after those 9 months of her sitting on the couch and listening and watching and learning what her parents had experienced and what their life was now like. And so we met. I had left the Mormon church when I was 18. And it was about 2 weeks after I had left for college. And I never really looked back. But I wasn't interested in any relationship with the Lord. I was not interested in talking about Jesus or religion or church or anything. I wanted to leave all of that behind, and I did the best that I could. I was a college athlete, and so I lived life to the fullest in the college years and a few years after that, but then realized how bankrupt that lifestyle is. I too quit my job, stopped going to school, and moved into the basement of my parents' home in 2009. And shortly thereafter, Taylee and I met, and through a bunch of conversations with Taylee, with her parents, and with her pastor in Brigham City, eventually they challenged me to read the Gospels and to start with the Gospel of John. And so I read through the Gospels several times and finally had to make a choice. Either I was king or he was king. And so I submitted my life to Jesus, and it sounds more dramatic than it really was, but it happened on our wedding day as we were holding hands at the altar and Taylee's pastor was marrying us. I remember thinking, I'm making a covenant to her and to God before all of these people. Well, what does that even mean? And so from that day forward, I have been on a journey to know who this covenant-making God is and what it means then for me to make a covenant and this relationship that I have with the sovereign God